Hello, and welcome to Debating Matters, the podcast where debating matters matter. Hi, I'm William from 104 London Debaters, a Toastmasters debating club based in London. And yes, you are listening to our podcast, Debating Matters. And in this, the very first episode, I will say just a little bit about what the point is of this podcast and then pose the question, well, what's the point of debating? So, first to the purpose of the podcast. The idea is to collect some of the insight, knowledge, and experience that we have accumulated in 104 London Debaters over the many years of debating, since the club was founded in 2015 by, among others, our founding member, Paul Carroll, who is a distinguished Toastmaster, or DTM, as we say in the Toastmasters milieu. Now, we have a lot of written material within the club, but we all know how it is in our busy lives. It's often easier to listen to something for 5, 10, 15 minutes as you do the dishes, go for a walk, or perhaps your commute, than it is to sit down and read a document. So the idea is to make some of that same knowledge more easily available, but also have additional material that is more difficult to have in writing, such as interviews with members and debate experts, conversation about debating-related issues, and, of course, including current issues and how debating skills can help you as you try to assess, for example, what a politician is saying or how you approach an important current issue. So those are the two elements that we hope will shape these podcast episodes. Firstly, to be an easily available repository of knowledge, tips and insight, and secondly, to provide you with what I hope will be interesting conversations about all sorts of debating-related matters. So, what is the purpose of the podcast is clear, but now for the second question. What is the point of debating? And I think it's worth starting this podcast series with that question, as everything else sort of follows on from that, doesn't it? Now, on the club's website, and the website is 104londondebaters.club. You can find it if you search that up on a reputable web search engine. On the website, you can find a blog called Disagreeing Agreeably, which I think is quite important in life as well as in a debating club. And on that blog, you'll find some blog posts on how to prepare to be the proposition in a debate, and also about being in opposition. There's one on fallacies, with hopefully some idea about how to spot a fallacy and how to avoid it. And of course, one on debating and public speaking, which is particularly relevant as we are a Toastmasters debating club. And one of only a few globally, actually, and the very first one in the United Kingdom. So just to get that one in. But also there is a post that poses this very question. What is the point of debating? And I want to look at some of the answers that we are suggesting. Firstly, we should perhaps first, like you do in a debate. When you have a debate, when you're the proposition, you have to actually define the motion. So why don't we start by defining what we mean by debate? Is it merely a quarrel where you shout your opinions at one another, perhaps just restating your prejudices and hope that someone out there will agree with you? Some sort of verbal fight where you try and land the biggest blow? Is that the idea? Well, that is often exactly what it looks like in many of the debates and discussion that we see, whether on the telly, online, even those we hear on the radio. Even if you, like me, tend to listen to Radio 4 occasionally. But it's not what a debate is supposed to be. Certainly not in the context of a formal or even semi-formal debate, as we practice it in our debate and similar debate clubs. A debate in this context is about presenting an argument, i.e. stating the case for or against something. And in his book, which I do recommend, called A Rule Book for Argument, debate expert Anthony Weston gives the following definition for what an argument is in a debate setting. And I quote, "To give an argument means to offer a set of reasons or evidence in support of a conclusion." I'll read that again. To give an argument means to offer a set of reasons or evidence in support of a conclusion. Quote, end of quote. So, to offer a set of reasons, that's the key point. Why do we need to offer reasons for our opinions? Because, as Weston goes on to say, and I quote again, "Not all views are equal. Some conclusions can be supported by good reasons. Others have much weaker support. But often we don't know which are which. We need to give arguments for different conclusions and then assess those arguments to see how strong they really are." End of quote. Basically, you may be wrong. A fallacy often heard these days is that something is my truth or my lived experience, essentially arguing from subjective anecdotes. Now, anecdotes can work well and be perfectly legitimate as examples, but overgeneralizing from a limited sample is a logical fallacy. We see today, particularly online, that people not only disagree politically, but that they seem to inhabit completely separate realities, where it is my truth against your truth. Now, the danger with that is that it becomes impossible to have a meaningful debate on that basis and to come to some sort of common understanding. Whereas a commitment to logic, to a shared reality, objectivity, and truth can protect us from and demagoguery and conspiracy theories, and it will enable us to find common ground across cultural, racial, age, class, or any other boundaries, including political beliefs. Steven Pinker puts it thus in his book from 2021 called Rationality, and I quote, "Each of us has a motive to prefer our truth, but together we're better off with the truth." Now, it may be a big claim to say that debating is about finding the truth, and that's not really the point as such. 104 London Debaters founding member and debate expert Paul Carroll often points out that both the proposition and the opposition may be making true claims in their respective arguments, but their task is to convince the audience that their reasons are more important than that of the other side. It's actually a criticism sometimes leveled at debating in debate clubs and societies that the activity is just a parlor game where you assume a position and then play devil's advocate for the fun of it without actually trying to find out which position is really true or right. Well, that description is partially correct, but it totally misses the point. It's true that at a debate meeting, we're not trying to settle any issue finally, once and for all. If in a debate meeting, say, we vote in favor of going to war with China, nobody will actually go to war, just because of that particular vote anyway. So we don't need to be worried about the right position winning, and instead, we just vote for that side which presented the strongest argument and who convinced us that their reasons were, in the context of that particular debate, the most important. And importantly, in the process, we will have practiced the method by which right and rational decisions are made. I'm going to make that point again. In the process of debating, we will have practiced the method by which right and rational decisions are made. Pinker points to research that indicates that humans, and I quote, "evolved not as intuitive scientists, but as intuitive lawyers. While people often try to get away with lame arguments for their own positions, they are quick to spot fallacies in other people's arguments." End of quote. What I'd like to highlight from that particular quote is the point about spotting other people's fallacies. In a formal debate where you take a position that is not necessarily yours, you will actually be in a better position to reject weak reasons because you have no personal prejudice in favor of that point of view. But of course, you don't want to lose either. So you do have an interest in winning the debate. And for that reason, you are going to seek out really strong reasons The sort of reasons that can make sense also to the non-believer, as it were. And that's why it's often beneficial to defend a view you do not personally hold. And then you expose this case to the criticism of the opposition, who will do all they can to plug holes and undermine your arguments. So you obviously need to make it as strong and watertight as you possibly can. But that whole process of presenting a claim, giving the reasons for it, as per Weston's definition above, then having those reasons questioned by the opposition, responding to that criticism, so that's the whole rebuttal process, as we call it in debating, and of course drawing a logical conclusion. Based on that, all of that are components of a rational, logical, and even what we might call a scientific or academic decision-making process. And that, dear listener, is what we practice and become better at doing when we debate. I would therefore submit to you that that is the very purpose of debating, becoming better at doing that process of decision-making which is truly rational and logical. In addition, of course, as we work in teams, we become better team players. We practice our public speaking skills, and we get to socialize with a broad range of different, intelligent, and I think often very interesting people. So hey, what's not to like? Now, I just want to round off this podcast with a quote from Jonathan Reitsch's book, The Constitution of Knowledge. And he says the following: perfect objectivity will always elude us, but we come much closer if we follow the empirical rule by checking our views against others' different views, which of course is possible only where people disagree. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we welcome any feedback, critical or encouraging, or any other comments or opinions you wish to share. You can write a few words in the comment section or send an email to info@104londondebaters.club. That's info@104londondebaters.club. And there, as well as on the website, you can get information about joining the club as a member. Or if you want to come as a guest for a couple of times first, you are very welcome to do so. Hope to see you soon, and in the meantime, remember that debating matters.